By the time Michelle started school, she was already hardened. She learned quick that showing weakness got you eaten alive. So she built walls, high and thick, let no one in. It was safer that way, but lonelier too. Michelle watched the other kids laugh and play. She wanted to join them, but she didn't know how. The ghetto had already claimed her. Sarah, his beautiful Sarah. She should have been here. They were supposed to raise Michelle together, but life had other plans. Complications during childbirth, they said. Nothing they could do. In one moment, Michael gained a daughter and lost a wife. He wasn't ready to be a single father, especially not with the war still raging in his head. For a while, it was enough, but as Megan grew older, Nana's love couldn't fill the void left by absent parents. The streets called to her, promised excitement, freedom, and escape from the suffocating poverty. Megan started staying out late, skipping school, running with a crew that Nana warned her about. Grandma, as Nana. "You're better than this," I would plead. But Megan couldn't hear me over the roar of her own anger. At her father for checking out. At her mother for dying. At the world for dealing her such a shit hand. She was 16, furious, and determined to live fast, even if it killed her. Michael watched his daughter spiral, recognized the signs, the glassy eyes, the mood swings, the desperation. He wanted to help, to save her. But how could he when he couldn't even save himself? His own addiction to pills had only gotten worse. Michael, as Michael. Some nights, father and daughter would sit in silence, both high, both lost, both yearning for connection but not knowing how to reach out. The ghetto had claimed another generation, and neither of them knew how to break the cycle. He made Michelle feel special, told her she was beautiful, promised her the world.
I fell hard and fast, believed every sweet lie. Darius was older, charming.
When he asked her to do favors for his friends, she agreed. Anything to keep his love. But it was all a con, a setup.
Drugged, terrified, headed to a place I'd never heard of, to a man named Han, a brothel owner in Harlem.
She was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Before I knew what was happening, I was in the back of a van.
To disconnect. But nothing could have readied Michelle for the horror of that first night, or the nights that followed.
I even missed the familiar decay of my old neighborhood. Anything was better than this hell. The other girls tried to prepare her, told her to numb herself.
In my darkest moments, I thought of home, of Nana's warm hugs, of my father's rare moments of lucidity.
But escape seemed impossible. Han's reach was long, his cruelty limitless. Michelle's world shrank to a dirty mattress and an endless parade of faceless men.
Michael knew something was wrong the moment Michelle didn't come home. Call it father's intuition, or the paranoia left over from Nam. But he felt it in his bones. His baby girl was in trouble.
He tore through the neighborhood, questioned Michelle's friends, threatened her dealers. No one knew anything. Or they weren't talking. The cops were useless. Just another missing ghetto kid to them. But to Michael, she was everything.
For the first time in years, I felt a purpose, a reason to fight.
He flushed his pills, endured the agonizing withdrawal, pieced together his fractured mind. All for Michelle. He wouldn't fail her. Not again.
Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. My search took me to the darkest corners of the city. I infiltrated gang territories, bribed pimps, followed every lead no matter how slim. The horrors I witnessed made Nam look tame, but I wouldn't stop, couldn't stop, not until I brought my daughter home. As I hunted for Michelle, I was forced to confront my own demons. The guilt of being an absent father, the trauma I'd buried with pills and alcohol, the man I'd become versus the man I wanted to be.
He started attending VA support groups, talked about the war for the first time, about losing Sarah, about failing Michelle. It was painful, raw, but slowly he began to heal, to remember the strong, capable man he once was.
My military training kicked in. I approached the search with strategic precision, gathered intel, made connections, used the skills that had kept me alive in the jungle to navigate the urban warfare of pimps and traffickers.
There were setbacks, moments of despair when the trail went cold, when the whispers of what happened to girls like Michelle became too much to bear. But Michael refused to give up. He'd lost his wife. He wouldn't lose his daughter too, even if it meant facing down the devil himself. Harlem was a world unto itself. Michael felt like an outsider, a stranger in a strange land. But he pressed on, following whispers, chasing shadows, always one step behind, until finally a break.
A girl who'd escaped Han's clutches, traumatized, barely able to speak. But she remembered Michelle, gave me an address. It wasn't much, but it was hope, a lifeline in a sea of despair.
Michael staked out the building, watched the comings and goings, saw the broken girls, the sleazy Johns. His blood boiled. He wanted to storm in, guns blazing, but he knew better. One wrong move and Michelle could disappear forever.
I bided my time, gathered more intel, made a plan. It was risky, dangerous, but I was a man with nothing left to lose, except the one thing that mattered most, my daughter. And I'd walk through hell to bring her home.
The rescue wasn't clean, it wasn't pretty. There was violence, blood, screams in the night. But when the dust settled, Michael held his daughter in his arms, bruised, battered, but alive. They clung to each other and wept. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Michelle's trauma ran deep, as did Michael's. They were both broken in ways that might never fully heal, but they had each other, and for the first time in years, they had hope.
We left the ghetto behind, started fresh in a new city, found counseling, support groups, a chance to rebuild. It was hard. Some days felt impossible, but we pushed through. Together.
Years later, Michelle stood before a group of at-risk teens, shared her story, the horror and the hope.
Where you start doesn't have to be where you end, she told them. Change is possible.
In the back of the room, Michael watched with pride. They'd been to hell and back, but they'd made it. And if they could, anyone could. That was the message they carried, a light in the darkness, hope for those still lost in the shadows.